What if everything you've been chasing, money, love, answers, even God, was never outside you at all? Imagine running your whole life, searching in books, relationships, and opportunities, only to discover the treasure was buried in the one place you never thought to look. What if the truth is so close, so intimate, that it feels almost uncomfortable to face? Stay with me, because once you see it, you'll never see your life the same way again. Most people spend years chasing what they think will finally complete them. They believe the next job, the next relationship, the next opportunity will be the one that changes everything. Yet after the rush fades, the old emptiness quietly returns. And deep down, a haunting question remains. Why do I always end up here again? Neville Goddard's teachings confront this cycle with a radical truth. Nothing you seek is out there. The kingdom is not in circumstances, but in consciousness. It sounds almost offensive to the logical mind. How could the secret to wealth, love, and freedom be hiding inside you all along? Yet this is the paradox. The more you search outside, the further you move from what has always existed within. In this journey, you'll see why the outer world can never satisfy, why searching assumes lack, and how imagination and feeling are the only true evidence of manifestation. More than that, you'll learn the signs that you've stopped the chase and started living in the end. This is not another motivational pep talk. It's an awakening, a reminder that the power of assumption, the law that shapes every detail of your life, has always been in your hands. Once you grasp this, you'll stop running after shadows and start creating from the source itself. So, if you've been searching everywhere for answers, pause. Because what you're about to discover could flip the way you see yourself, your life, and even God. Everyone knows that person who is constantly running after the next sign, the next course, or the next teacher, as if the missing piece of their life were always hiding in someone else's hands. It's a restless movement, almost like a spiritual treadmill, exhausting, noisy, and yet it never actually goes anywhere. They buy books, attend workshops, and pray for miracles, hoping that something out there will finally bring peace. But when the excitement fades, the old void returns, as if nothing had ever changed. That hunger to keep searching outside never seems to end. Think about how many times people say, if I had that job, I'd be happy. If I found the right person, I'd feel complete. The list goes on like a grocery receipt of dreams tied to circumstances. This mindset makes life a constant waiting room, where joy is always postponed until the external world delivers. The irony is that the more they wait, the more the outside seems to delay. It's almost as if reality were echoing their belief that fulfillment is always somewhere else. And then comes the chase after signs. People ask for feathers, repeating numbers, or sudden phone calls as proof that the universe is listening. They hold their breath, staring at clocks hoping for 11:11 to flash, like it's a divine confirmation. But after the fleeting thrill, doubt creeps in again. Was that really a sign, or just coincidence? The loop resets. Searching outside becomes an addiction, not a solution. It's not wrong to enjoy synchronicities or admire a mentor's wisdom, but problems arise when people start outsourcing their power. They treat life like a scavenger hunt, expecting that some external clue will unlock the treasure chest, but the treasure never shows up because it was never buried in the outer world in the first place. The more they dig outside, the deeper the emptiness inside grows. And emptiness is clever. It disguises itself as curiosity, when in truth, it's lack. You can probably recall conversations with friends or family who live repeating the same line, "If only I had this, everything would be different." It's painful to watch because you sense they're placing their happiness hostage to conditions. They don't realize they're chasing shadows in a mirror, mistaking the reflection for the source, and every time the reflection doesn't smile back, they think life has betrayed them, when in reality, it's their own gaze that needs shifting. The pursuit can even feel noble. People justify it saying, "I'm working hard, I'm dedicated, I'm learning." But deep inside, it's not learning, it's running. Running away from the uncomfortable silence where truth whispers, what you're chasing is already here. That silence terrifies because it threatens the entire game of seeking. After all, if the answer is inside, then who's left to blame? Who can you hold responsible for the delay? It's not uncommon to see this in spirituality and manifestation circles. The newest technique, the latest meditation, the trendiest affirmation, all promising to be the one that finally works. Yet weeks later, people are back where they started, scrolling for another secret. The cycle is endless because the foundation is off. They're searching outside, while the real shift lies in their inner world. Without that shift, everything else is just rearranging furniture in an empty house. Let's be honest. Chasing outside gives the illusion of progress. It feels like movement, even though it's not transformation. Buying a new course, listening to a podcast, or traveling to meet a guru creates a temporary high. It feels productive. But once the glow wears off, the old patterns return and the heart starts whispering again, there must be more. And so the search continues, like a thirsty traveler drinking salt water. What makes this pattern so tricky is how invisible it becomes. People don't notice they're living in a loop because the loop feels like growth. They think they're advancing, when in reality they're spinning in place. It's the same with those who keep polishing the mirror instead of cleaning their face. They wonder why the image doesn't shine. The truth, the reflection will never change until the source does. But admitting this means facing themselves, and that's the hardest path to take. And so the endless search outside continues until something inside finally cracks. So until one day, after chasing yet another promise, someone sits down and asks, what if I've been looking in the wrong place all along? That moment of pause is precious because it opens the doorway to a different teaching. A teaching that doesn't point to the stars, numbers, or signs, but to something far closer. Neville Goddard's teachings came like a whisper that turned into thunder. The kingdom is within. Imagine how revolutionary this sounded in a world obsessed with chasing external proof. Instead of begging heaven to drop blessings down like coins from the sky, Neville pointed to something far more radical. He said the real stage of creation isn't out there, it's in here, inside consciousness. A place no one can see, but where everything begins. This isn't a metaphor to make people feel better when life is tough. It's a literal principle. Imagination creates reality. Every outer event, every so-called coincidence, starts first as a seed inside. Neville wasn't offering philosophy. He was delivering a manual for conscious creation. He insisted that what you dare to assume inwardly is what eventually hardens into fact outwardly. The kingdom of heaven is not a faraway realm. It's the inner world we carry daily. Think about how freeing this is. If the kingdom exists within, then no circumstance has the final word. A low bank account doesn't define destiny, because abundance is first an inner assumption. A failed relationship isn't the end, because love is born from the state you occupy within. Neville's message removes the excuse of waiting for the world to change first. Instead, it hands the power back to the one place no one can take from you, your inner state. People often resist this truth because it sounds too simple. Really? Just assume the wish fulfilled and live in the end? That can't be it. But that's exactly why so many overlook it, because they're addicted to complexity. They want steps, rituals, and endless searching outside. Neville's radical simplicity threatened that game. He stripped away the noise and said, it's your feeling that's the secret. Nothing more, nothing less. Of course, the mind argues, if it's inside, why don't I see it yet? Neville would smile at this question because it reveals the confusion. The outer world is always the echo, never the cause. To demand that reality change before you feel different is like demanding the echo shout before you speak. The law of assumption doesn't work backwards. You don't wait to see it to believe. You believe, and then you see. What makes Neville Goddard's teaching so piercing is how they dismantle excuses. If consciousness is the cause, then there's no more blaming the economy, the family, or bad luck. This isn't about guilt. It's about freedom. Because if the cause is inside, then so is the solution. Suddenly you realize you don't need to beg, chase, or hustle endlessly. You need only to awaken to the fact that God within is the author of every scene you live. Neville called this, God, your own wonderful human imagination. That phrase alone changes everything. Instead of picturing a distant deity pulling strings, he invites you to see your imagination as the divine in action. The pictures you hold, the feelings you nurture, the states you embody, those are prayers. And unlike words, they never return void. They echo back as events, relationships, and opportunities. This doesn't mean external teachers or tools are useless. They can inspire, point, and remind. But they're like streetlights. They can't walk for you. The actual step into manifestation truth happens only inside your own mind. That's where you close your eyes and dare to feel what no one else can see. That's where you assume the wish fulfilled and rest in the knowing that reality must conform. The outer follows, never leads. Imagine someone trying to light a candle with a mirror. Impossible, right? Because the flame isn't in the reflection, it's at the source. That's the essence of Neville's law of assumption. The reflection, the outer world, can only duplicate what burns inside. No amount of polishing the mirror will ignite the wick. You have to light it within, and once you do, the whole room changes. So when Neville declared that the kingdom is within, he wasn't offering comfort. He was handing over the key to move from endless searching outside into conscious creation. The question isn't whether the key works. The question is whether you dare to use it. Because once you test it, you'll see the treasure you were chasing has always been hidden in plain sight. The outer world sparkles like a storefront display, bright, tempting, and full of promises. But anyone who's ever bought something thinking it would fix everything knows the truth. The thrill fades fast. That new job, relationship, or purchase feels good for a moment, then slowly becomes ordinary. The hunger returns, whispering that something is still missing. And so the cycle begins again. Neville Goddard often reminded his listeners that the outer world is nothing more than a mirror of the inner state. A mirror can only reflect, it cannot originate. To try to find permanent satisfaction out there is like putting makeup on a reflection in glass. It looks good for a second, but the real face hasn't changed. Until the inner world transforms, the outer can only echo the same patterns. Think of people who climb career ladders their whole life, believing each promotion will finally bring peace. Yet at the top, many admit the same emptiness lingers, sometimes even louder. Why? Because achievements outside cannot fill the silent space within. The law of assumption teaches that unless you first assume the wish fulfilled inside, the world's prizes taste hollow. It's not the promotion itself, it's the state you carry into it. This is why relationships can't save us either. Two empty people don't suddenly create wholeness by joining hands. They simply amplify the lack inside each other. Neville Goddard teachings point to a deeper truth. Love begins in consciousness. To live in the end of being loved means embodying the state of already being chosen before anyone arrives. Without that, the outer partner will never feel enough. Many confuse this with pessimism, but it's the opposite. Real satisfaction comes when you stop demanding the outer world fill you up. Imagine chasing a shadow, hoping it will hug you back. That's what searching outside feels like. It looks close, but it slips away every time you reach. The moment you turn and embrace the source, everything shifts. The shadow follows without effort. Even wealth works this way. People think money alone will erase their fears. But if they carry the inner state of lack, millions can pass through their hands and still feel like sand slipping away. The manifestation truth is clear. Security is not in the number, but in the assumption of abundance. When you embody that, even small beginnings feel rich. Without it, even big wins feel fragile. The outer world will always move, shift, and fade. No condition lasts forever. That's why leaning on it for identity is like building a house on the sand. One wave, and it collapses. Conscious creation invites us to build on the rock of inner assumption, because that's the only thing permanent. Once you know that imagination creates reality, you stop begging circumstances to keep you safe. Some might say, but aren't external blessings proof? Yes, but proof follows belief, never precedes it. Feeling is the secret. The satisfaction is not in waiting for the mirror to smile, it's in smiling first, knowing the reflection has no choice. People get trapped in frustration because they reverse the order, asking the effect to come before the cause. But Neville's wisdom flips the script. This is why outer satisfaction is always temporary. It's designed to echo, not to originate. The job, the partner, the money, they're not the source of joy, but the echo of joy carried inside. When someone finally realizes this, they no longer fear losing things, because even if conditions change, they know the source within remains untouched. That's freedom. So the outer world can never truly satisfy, not because it's cruel, but because it was never meant to. It's only a mirror, a reflection of what already exists within. The real question is, are you still trying to polish the reflection, or are you ready to transform the face behind the glass? That's where Neville leads us next. Every time someone looks outside for answers, there's an invisible belief running beneath the surface. I don't have it yet. That thought may not be spoken, but it echoes in every action. When you chase a sign, buy another book, or wait for proof, you're declaring to yourself and to the world that the treasure is missing. And life, like a faithful mirror, reflects that hidden state of lack right back at you. Neville Goddard taught that the law of assumption never takes a break. Even when you say you're just waiting, What you're really assuming is absence. Searching outside is not neutral. It reinforces the state of not having. It's like planting a seed of lack over and over, hoping one day it will grow into abundance. But seeds don't betray themselves. Lack can only reproduce more lack. Think of someone constantly asking, "When will it happen?" That question itself carries the assumption that it hasn't. And if the inner world is the cause, then that state continues to unfold outside. The harder they search, the louder the absence becomes. It's not that the universe is cruel, it's simply obedient. It mirrors the belief behind the search, not the words spoken with it. This is why people get stuck in cycles of manifestation frustration. They affirm, visualize, and wait, but deep down they're still anchored in the feeling of not having. They're still begging life to show them evidence before they feel secure, and that posture screams lack louder than any words of faith. The outer world, being only an echo, has no choice but to keep repeating the same delay. Imagine standing in front of a vending machine that only gives what you've already assumed is there. If you press the button while believing the slot is empty, you'll stare forever at nothing. Searching outside works the same way. It's pushing buttons with an inner certainty of lack. That hidden certainty sabotages every effort, and the person doesn't even realize they're the one feeding it. The tragedy is that most people think their searching is proof of faith. They say, "Look, I'm trying, I'm doing the work, I'm seeking." But Neville Goddard teachings flip the script. True faith is resting in the end, not chasing signs of the middle. The more restless the search, the more it exposes the underlying doubt. And doubt is simply faith in the wrong direction. Even prayer, when rooted in begging, carries this hidden assumption. The tone may sound reverent, but the energy whispers, "I don't have it yet." Neville often warned that such prayer pushes the miracle away, because God within responds not to words, but to the feeling behind them. And if that feeling is lack, then lack becomes the answered prayer. It's subtle, but powerful. This hidden assumption also explains why people repeat the same patterns. They change jobs, partners, or cities, but carry the same inner state. And no matter where they go, life faithfully delivers more of what they secretly assume. It's like carrying tinted glasses. No matter the scenery, everything takes on the same shade. Without removing the lens of lack, nothing new can appear. Becoming aware of this is liberating, because once you spot the hidden assumption, you can stop feeding it. You can pause and ask, "Am I moving from fullness or from emptiness?" That single question can break years of blind searching. It forces you to recognize the difference between chasing and assuming, between lack and fulfillment. And recognition is the first step to change. So the next time you catch yourself searching outside, pause. Ask what assumption is fueling the search. Because behind the chase, there's always a quiet voice repeating, "I don't have it." And that's the very belief recreating the absence. But if you dare to flip it, to assume the wish fulfilled, the entire mirror begins to change, which leads us straight into the role of imagination. Imagination is not child's play, it's the workshop of reality. Neville Goddard never tired of reminding people that imagination creates reality. Every outer event you've lived was once an inner picture, whether conscious or unconscious. Yet most treat imagination as a daydream, not realizing it's the very tool shaping their destiny. To ignore it is like owning a magic brush and never touching the canvas. Think of how naturally children use this gift. A blanket becomes a cape, a cardboard box becomes a spaceship. They live in the end of their vision without asking permission from logic. And what's fascinating is how their whole body reacts. They laugh, run, and feel as if it's already true. That's the purest expression of the law of assumption. Assume the wish fulfilled and embody it fully. Adults, on the other hand, often dismiss imagination as just fantasy. Yet every invention, every book, every breakthrough first lived in someone's inner world. Airplanes, smartphones, novels all began as imaginal acts. The difference between fantasy and reality is persistence. One is abandoned, the other is felt and sustained until the world conforms. Neville's teachings are clear. Imagination is not escape, it's creation. But here's the twist. People are always imagining, whether they know it or not. Worry is imagination in disguise. Fear is imagination rehearsing failure. Doubt is imagination painting lack. So the question isn't whether you're using imagination, it's whether you're using it consciously. Once you realize this, you stop treating it like a toy and start wielding it like the creative power it is. Picture someone lying in bed replaying every mistake of the day. That's imagination at work, planting seeds for more of the same tomorrow. Now picture someone closing their eyes and feeling the relief of already being where they want to be. Same tool, different use. One recreates the old, the other births the new. Imagination doesn't choose sides. It simply obeys the state you impress upon it. Neville called this inner workshop the true kingdom of heaven, because it's here you can live scenes that no one else can see. And those scenes, when felt as real, become more than fantasy. They become blueprints. Outer life then arranges itself to match them. This is the spiritual awakening he pointed to, realizing that the inner movie runs the outer theater. Think about how much easier life becomes with this understanding. Instead of chasing opportunities, you create inner ones. Instead of begging for signs, you generate inner conviction. And the funny part? The outer world starts bringing you the very signs you used to chase. It's not magic, it's law. What you embody inside, life cannot help but echo outside. This doesn't mean imagination is about daydreaming castles in the air without grounding. It's about crafting simple, vivid, imaginal acts that imply fulfillment. A handshake that seals the deal. A hug that confirms reconciliation. The thrill of reading a bank statement already showing abundance. These small inner scenes carry enormous power when felt with conviction. Many resist because they want proof before they dare to feel. But Neville Goddard teachings insist the feeling comes first. Imagination is the soil where you plant the assumption, and the world is the harvest. Waiting for proof before planting is like standing in a barren field demanding crops. Only when you sow inwardly can you reap outwardly. So the role of imagination is not optional, it's central. It's the place where the invisible becomes visible, where states are chosen and where destiny takes shape. The only question is, will you let your imagination drift in worry, or will you harness it consciously as the power of assumption? Because what you allow there, you will surely meet out here. And that brings us to the next key, feeling as evidence. Neville Goddard's boldest claim was simple yet revolutionary. Feeling is the secret. He meant that the only real evidence of manifestation is the inner experience itself. When you feel the wish fulfilled, that's the proof. It exists already in consciousness. Most people demand outer confirmation first, but Neville flipped the order. The feeling comes before the fact, never after. Think of the way we accept dreams. When you wake up from a vivid dream, your body reacts, heart racing, palms sweaty, even though nothing really happened. That's the power of feeling. The subconscious doesn't argue about whether it's real or not. It simply accepts what's felt as truth. And once accepted inside, it's only a matter of time before it echoes outside. This is why Neville insisted you must live in the end. To assume the wish fulfilled means embodying its feeling now, not waiting for circumstances to change. If you want to experience abundance, feel the relief of already having it. If you want love, rest in the warmth of already being chosen. The feeling itself is the evidence that the seed is planted. People often ask, but how do I know it's working? Neville's answer was blunt. You know by the shift within. The sense of peace, the subtle joy, the quiet confidence, that is the manifestation truth in progress. Waiting for an email, a phone call, or a sign is falling back into searching outside. The inner shift is the first and only real proof needed. A useful analogy is pregnancy. When conception happens, no one sees it immediately. The outer world looks the same, but the evidence is already there, invisibly alive within. Feeling works the same way. When you conceive the desire in imagination and feel its reality, the seed is planted. Outer signs will follow, but the true evidence is the inner knowing. This is why faith is often misunderstood. Faith is not blind hope or wishful thinking. Faith is the inner conviction felt so deeply, it no longer seeks external validation. It rests, it knows. That inner state is the law of assumption in action. Outer confirmation becomes inevitable, because the echo has no choice but to follow the sound. People sabotage themselves by dismissing the feeling as just imagination, but remember, imagination creates reality. The feeling impressed within is more real than the outer fact, because it's the cause. Outer facts shift like sand, but the inner feeling is the root. Once it takes hold, conditions must rearrange themselves to match it. That's the power of assumption at work. Consider how advertisers use this principle every day. They don't sell products, they sell feelings. The car isn't just metal and wheels, it's the feeling of freedom, power, or success. Once that feeling is accepted, people act as if they already own it, and eventually they do. The same law applies to conscious creation. Feel first, and the facts align later. So the practice isn't about forcing things outside, it's about surrendering to the feeling inside. You stop trying to make the world bend and instead inhabit the state you desire, and in that inhabiting, reality quietly reorganizes. It may look like coincidence, but it's law in motion. The feeling carried within becomes the script the outer world performs. That's why Neville Goddard was relentless. If you want proof, stop looking outward. Close your eyes and ask, "Can I feel it now?" That is the true evidence. The moment you dare to accept the inner reality, the outer is already set in motion. And to help you taste this truth, Neville offered a simple but profound technique: turning inward. Neville Goddard never left his listeners without a practice. He wasn't just theory, he gave techniques to bring the law of assumption alive. One of the simplest yet most profound is turning inward. It starts with something everyone can do: closing the eyes. In that small gesture, you shut out the noise of appearances and step into the inner world where creation truly happens. Picture yourself after a long day. You lie down, close your eyes, and the world outside dissolves. Bills, deadlines, unanswered texts, all fade. This is the sacred moment where imagination creates reality. Here you can assume the wish fulfilled without interruption. The body rests, but the mind becomes the workshop of destiny. Neville knew this was where true conscious creation takes place. The practice is disarmingly simple. Instead of begging or searching outside, choose a short imaginal act that implies fulfillment. Don't complicate it with details. A hug that implies reconciliation. A handshake that seals success. The quiet thrill of saying, "It's done." These short, vivid scenes, repeated in feeling, become seeds that the subconscious accepts as fact. The key is not length, but intensity. You don't need a 2-hour movie in your head, just a snapshot alive with feeling. Neville often compared it to a lullaby, soft, repetitive, and convincing enough to slip past resistance. As you relax into the scene, the line between pretend and real blurs. The subconscious doesn't analyze, it simply absorbs. Many overthink the technique, asking, "Am I doing it right?" But that very doubt reveals the old habit of searching outside. Turning inward means trusting the process. If you can feel the end, even faintly, you've already impressed the seed. Like a gardener, you don't dig it up every day to check. You rest knowing it's growing unseen. That rest is part of the work. One of Neville's favorite instructions was to enter the state akin to sleep. This drowsy border between waking and sleep is powerful because the critical mind relaxes. Here, imaginal acts slip in without resistance. Instead of replaying worries before bed, you replay fulfillment. Night after night, the subconscious receives the same message. This is real, and soon life echoes it. Think of how people already do this unconsciously, but in reverse. They replay failures, imagine arguments, and fall asleep rehearsing lack. No wonder the same conditions keep showing up. Neville's method is simply flipping the script. If imagination creates reality, then why not feed it scenes of joy instead of fear? The effort is the same. The fruit is entirely different. Turning inward is also a way of reclaiming power. Out there, you can't control circumstances, people, or timing. But in here, in imagination, you're free. You can live the scene as vividly as you choose. And the miracle is this: the outer world eventually bends to what you dared to embody inside. That's the mystery of conscious creation. A practical tip: start small. Don't jump to imagining an entire mansion if your heart can't yet feel it. Begin with something closer, like the satisfaction of hearing a friend congratulate you or the smile of someone you love. Once you see how quickly small inner shifts echo outside, faith grows naturally. Then, bigger imaginal acts feel easier to accept. So the technique of turning inward isn't escape, it's alignment. It's stepping into the place where the end already exists, where feeling is the evidence, and where God within responds instantly. The world outside may still look unchanged, but inside, the shift is complete. And that shift brings a new kind of peace, one that reveals the signs you've stopped searching outside. One of the clearest signs that someone has stopped searching outside is peace. Not the kind that comes after things finally work out, but the kind that shows up before. It's a quiet confidence, a settled knowing even when conditions look unchanged. Neville Goddard called this resting in the end. When you assume the wish fulfilled, the frantic chase ends, and peace takes its place. Another sign is the fading need for constant validation. When someone is still stuck in searching, they check for proof every 5 minutes. The bank app, the phone, the mirror. But when the inner world shifts, that compulsion softens. They no longer demand the mirror smile before they do. They smile first, because they know the reflection has no choice but to follow. Gratitude also changes flavor. Instead of being conditional, "I'll be grateful when it arrives," gratitude becomes unconditional. You wake up thankful, not because of outer proof, but because of the inner evidence of feeling. This kind of gratitude is magnetic. It signals to life, "I already have it," and life, in turn, rearranges itself to echo that state. Relationships reveal this shift too. When you stop searching outside, you don't cling to others to fill your gaps. You meet them from wholeness, not from need. Conversations feel lighter, less desperate. Love is no longer a negotiation, it's an overflow. Neville Goddard teachings remind us that love begins in consciousness. When you feel chosen within, outer love simply reflects it. Even setbacks lose their sting. Someone rooted in searching interprets obstacles as proof they've been ignored. But someone rooted in assumptions sees them differently. They know outer appearances are only shadows of old states. Instead of panicking, they persist in the inner truth. That calm persistence is a powerful sign of having turned inward. Another sign is reduced dependence on rituals. When someone trusts their imagination creates reality, they don't need endless techniques. They may still enjoy affirmations or meditations, but they're not slaves to them. They know the power lies not in the tool, but in the feeling impressed. The search for the next method fades, replaced by quiet confidence in the law of assumption. Daily life also feels lighter. Tasks that once felt heavy lose their grip. There's no longer the sense of, "If this doesn't work, I'm doomed." Instead, there's playfulness, even humor, in how life unfolds. The person starts noticing synchronicities, not as desperate signs, but as joyful confirmations. Searching outside turns into enjoying inside. You also notice patience that feels natural, not forced. Instead of counting days like a prisoner, you move as if it's already done. Time stops being an enemy and becomes irrelevant. When you live in the end, whether it takes 1 day or 1 year doesn't matter. The inner state is already fulfilled, so the outer timeline loses its power. Perhaps the most subtle sign is a shift in identity. You stop thinking of yourself as someone waiting and start living as someone who already has. This isn't faking, it's embodying. From this place, decisions, words, and actions flow naturally in alignment with the new state. Outer results become inevitable, because identity always creates reality. These signs don't mean perfection, they mean progress. They show that the endless chase has been replaced by inner knowing. And as you settle into this peace, gratitude, and quiet confidence, you realize something deeper. Persisting in this inner truth is the only real work left to do. Once someone catches a glimpse of inner truth, the real challenge begins: persistence. Neville Goddard always stressed that the law of assumption isn't about a single moment of faith, but a steady resting in it. Anyone can feel the wish fulfilled for a few minutes. But to remain there, even when appearances scream the opposite, is where the transformation unfolds. The outer world often tempts us back into doubt. Bills arrive, relationships wobble, circumstances appear stubborn. It's easy to think, maybe it's not working. But Neville insisted, these are only echoes of old states. They have no power except the power we give them. Persistence means looking at appearances without being hypnotized by them. You acknowledge them, but you don't surrender to them. Imagine a seed planted in soil. For days, nothing seems to happen. Does that mean it's dead? Of course not. Underneath, roots are forming, unseen. Manifestation truth works the same way. The inner assumption is already alive, even if the surface looks unchanged. Persistence is trusting the unseen growth, refusing to dig up the seed in impatience. Neville Goddard teachings make this clear. The bridge of incidents will unfold, sometimes in surprising ways. But if you quit assuming before the bridge is complete, you cut off the process. Many people sabotage themselves by abandoning the state just before the shift arrives. Persistence is choosing to stand in the inner truth until the outer has no choice but to bow to it. Persistence is not force, it's quiet confidence. It doesn't mean repeating affirmations 10,000 times out of desperation. It means resting calmly in the inner reality as if it were already done. Think of it like wearing new clothes. At first they feel unfamiliar, but the longer you wear them, the more natural they become. Soon they feel like your skin. That's persistence. One practical way to persist is through daily revisiting. Before sleep, enter that state akin to sleep, Neville emphasized, and replay the scene of fulfillment. Each night you water the seed. Each night you remind your subconscious of the new state. Over time, this nightly persistence builds an inner momentum so strong that outer appearances lose their grip. Another key is awareness. Throughout the day, notice when old assumptions creep back. Instead of scolding yourself, simply return to the state. Say inwardly, "No, I live in the end." This gentle redirect keeps you aligned without turning the process into a struggle. Persistence is not about perfection, it's about consistency. Like steering a car, you correct as you go. The reward of persistence is freedom from emotional whiplash. You no longer rise and fall with every outer event. You stand anchored in inner truth, and from there, life feels stable, even playful. The world may test, but you're no longer shaken. That unshakable calm is itself proof that persistence is working. Outer results then follow naturally, like fruits ripening on a tree. Remember, persistence is a choice renewed daily. No one else can hold the state for you. Mentors, books, or signs may inspire, but only you can persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is why Neville called it conscious creation. It's the decision to remain loyal to the unseen, knowing it's more real than the seen. That loyalty is the difference between delay and fulfillment, and as persistence deepens, something incredible happens. You realize you're no longer trying to manifest. You're simply living from the inner state naturally without effort. The outer results become secondary, because the inner truth already feels complete. And then you see the great discovery Neville pointed to all along. It was always within. At the end of all the searching, chasing, and striving, the discovery feels almost disarming. It was always within. Neville Goddard never tired of pointing to this truth. The treasure we've begged life to deliver has been sitting quietly inside consciousness the whole time. What changes isn't the arrival of something new, it's the recognition of what's always been there. Think about how many years people spend running in circles. They look for signs, teachers, rituals, and breakthroughs, believing the secret is hidden somewhere else. But when they finally turn inward, the realization lands with both relief and shock. The thing they were searching outside for was never missing. It existed within, waiting patiently to be claimed. This is why Neville's teachings can feel almost offensive to the mind, because the ego loves complexity. It wants ladders to climb, puzzles to solve, work to prove worthiness. But the law of assumption says, assume the wish fulfilled, live in the end, and rest. No chase, no bargaining. The simplicity strips away the ego's favorite game and reveals a truth so obvious it was overlooked. The discovery is not intellectual, it's experiential. You feel it the moment peace replaces striving. You sense it when you no longer beg for signs, because you know the outcome is already secured. It's a spiritual awakening that shifts the entire foundation of life. The outer world may still look the same, but inside, everything has changed. Imagine searching your whole house for glasses, only to realize they've been on your head the entire time. That's exactly what happens in manifestation. The wish fulfilled wasn't hiding in the world, it was hiding in your state. Once you see this, you laugh at how blind the search was. But the laughter carries freedom, not regret. Neville Goddard called this recognition finding God within, not a distant deity in the clouds, but the creative power of your own imagination. That discovery dissolves the old game of chasing miracles, because once you know imagination creates reality, the chase ends. The outer world stops being the master and becomes the mirror. And here's the paradox. When you stop needing the world to deliver, it starts delivering faster. Why? Because the hidden assumption of lack has vanished. You no longer vibrate with desperation, but with fulfillment. The mirror finally reflects what you've always embodied inside. Outer life bends to the truth you've already claimed within. This is why Neville said, the greatest prayer is simply feeling the end as real. Nothing outside can give you what only consciousness creates. The discovery isn't about gaining, it's about awakening. You're not adding something new, you're uncovering what was always present. That shift changes how you see everything. From this point on, life feels lighter. You stop walking around as a beggar of circumstances and begin walking as a creator of them. The fear of loss fades because you know the source cannot be taken. Even if outer forms change, the inner reality remains. And from that permanence flows a peace no condition can shake. So the journey ends where it began, within. The treasure, the answer, the kingdom, it was never out there. It has always been inside, quietly waiting to be seen. And once discovered, you can never go back to the restless chase, because now you know the truth Neville Goddard revealed. What you were searching outside for has always existed within. So now the question is no longer when will it come, but am I willing to live as if it's already mine? Neville Goddard's reminder echoes. The world you see is only the shadow, and the source has always been within you. If you continue to chase, you'll keep reinforcing lack. But if you dare to assume the wish fulfilled, life cannot help but bend to your inner truth. Take a moment right now and reflect. What have you been desperately searching for outside? Love, money, peace, direction? And what would change if instead of running, you decided to feel it as real, here and now? That single shift is the line between waiting forever and finally living in the end. Remember, nothing outside can give you what your consciousness hasn't already claimed. The treasure is not out there, it's in you. And once you awaken to this, no condition, no delay, no circumstance has the power to shake you, because you'll know the mirror only reflects what you choose to embody. If this message stirred something inside you, don't let it pass by. Stay connected to this journey. Keep learning, keep practicing, keep awakening. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this is only the beginning. There are truths ahead that can transform not just what you do, but who you are. And the next chapter of your life doesn't start with the world changing. It starts with you choosing to live from within.